1st of July is also incidentally the 3rd anniversary, if you could call it that, of the implementation of GST in India. Done so much for corporate India, done so much to simplify and rationalize indirect taxes and the way it works in India. Significant increase as well in tax base, significant compliance increases as well in GST is what the government as well has noted since the implementation of GST. Let's then talk about on ground. What does India Inc. think of this reform, and what would we like to see in GST 2.0? Let me introduce Mahesh Jaisingh, partner and leader of indirect tax with Deloitte India. Mahesh, a pleasure having you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today on ET Now to talk about GST as it stands currently and the GST 2.0 that you would like to see in the very near future. But Mahesh, first, let's just talk now about what GST has done in the last 3 years. Your conversations with your clients, what are clients telling you? I mean, the one thing is that it's increased the tax base, compliance of course has increased as well, but on ground, what are your clients telling you? How pleased are they with the sort of seamlessness that GST has brought about as they conduct business?
Well, thank you. I think it's been a fascinating journey in the last 3 years of GST. I think the pulse from industry has been that it's quite positive, particularly for product companies, since they already had a state level of taxation prior to GST, migrating to GST was quite easy, and the benefits of a seamless tax credit system has been, come to the benefit of product companies. Service companies, on the other hand, have also had a bunch of benefits that they've received, which is having uniform way of filing compliances across the country, having whatever service tax that was earlier charged was creditable or not, depending on who the buyer of the services were. Under GST, all taxes on a B2B basis is subject to or eligible for a credit in the hands of the business buyer. So on that front, things have gone well. I think on front of services sector historically was actually taxed at a pan-India basis. So that's been a paradigm shift in taxation when you tax a service at a state level. So to that extent, they knew that it's going to be a set of challenges, but on balance, I think it's been a good journey so far.
Well, it may have been a good journey so far, but the idea is to make it a great journey going forward as well. No law is perfect. It always needs tweaks. It always needs updations as in it's put into practice. And, Deloitte, of course, does have a sense of the nerve of the pulse on what, clients want, where are the hiccups. So, what should be the key focus areas ahead? Let's call it GST 2.0, let's call it the new laws, certain tweaks in rules and regulations that you believe still need to be implemented in GST.
Yes, indeed. I think it's in the 3 years, numbers tell a story. It's almost 700 notifications, 175 clarifications. So the government has been quite agile in addressing issues. But in terms of what we expect to see going forward is particularly in the unfortunate times that we are in with the pandemic, I would expect some changes and reform around unlocked credits that companies have built up, whether the government would look at easing out those credits by providing refunds. This is independent of the exporters who are anyway entitled to refunds. That's point one. As we've completed third year, we will now get into tax assessments and audits. Rightly so, the audits have to take place. Companies' positions will get into scrutiny. What companies will expect is the government to constantly give some guidance on contentious tax issues to avoid many years of litigation. So that would be the second aspect. And I think on the third aspect is that we see some pockets of service export revenues getting sought to be taxed, which probably is not the intent from the policy and the legislature as well. I would expect there will be some focus on that to avoid an ongoing dispute that may result in some services which are ordinarily exported being sought to be denied the export status.
As and when laws are implemented on ground, that's when you really know the kind of, small kinks and nooks that still needs some tweaking. And I think with the number of clarifications that the government has constantly kept introducing right from the implementation of GST first in 2017 does speak volumes as to how the government as well has been in constant consultation to improve this GST. And yeah, these are some of the areas which Deloitte as well believes may still need a correction as things pass. But rationalization of taxes and unification, because firstly, of course, the idea was to have one nation, one tax, right? But we are still split between 4 to 5 tax rates, and many of them are quite high as well. The process of rationalizing the tax rates may have been a bit slow because of fiscal considerations. So do you think that should as well, of course, apart from the operational bit and the technical bit, do you think that as well should be high on the radar? Do you think that as well will increase compliance, maybe even increase GST revenues further?
Yes, I think on the rate front, if you recall, the 28%, which is the highest bracket, had almost 228 products on day zero, and now we're down to about 35 products. So to that extent, there has been a rate rationalization. Given the times that we are in, I think it may be premature for the government to embark on one single rate. And we will need to watch that space because it's a balancing act between having a revenue buoyancy and not increasing tax rates. I think I like the point that you made, the role of technology, the role of compliance, because going forward, it's less about tax rates that should generate a revenue. It's more about ensuring and enabling tax compliance. The government has already embarked on that journey, whereby we've brought about e-invoicing, which is meant to be coming out on October 1, 2020, which will mean an electronic invoice and a real-time reporting. That by its sheer nature, which is followed in some other countries, and India has done that pretty soon within 3 years of the launch of GST, where we are aspiring to be on e-invoicing in 3 months. Its empirical data has shown that the tax compliance and tax collections go up by 10-20% to say the least. So I would think that the government
Guys, I can't hear it. All right. You know what? I think we've just had a bit of network connection with Mahesh, but thank you so much, Mahesh, for joining us today. We'll let you go on that note. And yes, when we speak to you next year, I'm sure there'll be a lot more changes that will be introduced by the 4th anniversary of GST.